after the latest explosion of Ship 25 and boosters. SpaceX is now once again on the path to applying for a license for the launch of Starship Flight 3. However, there is a good sign about this period. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service conducted an assessment of the Boca Chica, Texas area after Starship's launch, which took place from SpaceX's Starbase launch facility in South Texas. On November 18, 2023, Starship embarked on its second integrated flight test from Starbase in Texas, constituting a significant step in its developmental journey. Although this trial didn't unfold within the confines of a laboratory or on a controlled test stand, it was undeniably a crucial evaluation. The insights gleaned from this flight are invaluable for the ongoing rapid advancement of Starship. Stay tuned as we dive into this and more in today's episode. We'll tell you everything you need to know about this and more.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of my channel.
The flight achieved significantly more milestones than the first, including keeping the area much cleaner. Some small pieces of debris were observed but are easily removable. A representative for the FWS said in a statement. The main impact noticed by staff was to the tidal flats, which occurred when the public entered the area for several hours to watch the launch. The representative added, foot traffic, chairs and off-leash dogs can impact this sensitive habitat. The FWS Cloud Live Agency's assessment is significant for SpaceX, which received criticism over the amount of debris it spread on nearby land during the first Starship launchback. In April, the Federal Aviation Administration oversaw a mishap investigation into the last launch and required a number of site changes before granting approval for the latest flight. SpaceX's Starbase launch facility is located next to a wildlife refuge that includes tidal flats. The FWS said that it will work with SpaceX to educate the public on preserving the flats as well as potentially coming up with alternative viewing locations for the public to watch. The next launch. After Starship's first test flight spread chunks of debris and pulverized concrete over hundreds of acres of nearby landscape, SpaceX opted to add massive steel plates underneath the Starship's launch mount that gushed large amounts of water upward. Known as a water deluge system, the apparatus is designed to absorb and mitigate the intense forces and heat created by Starship's Raptor engines at takeoff. SpaceX was also pleased with how the deluge system worked for the second test flight. CEO Elon Musk posted on his X social media site that the Launchpad was in great condition and that the deluge system required no refurbishment ahead of the next launch attempt. Musk has also said the Super Heavy booster in Starship spacecraft will likely be ready for a third test flight in 3 to 4 weeks, according to a Sunday post on social media, adding that there are 3 ships in final production. Indeed, there are 4 Starship spacecraft and at least 2 Super Heavy boosters, which are visible from public roadways near SpaceX's facility in South Texas. It's not clear, however, how long it'll take SpaceX engineers to review the data gathered during Saturday's flight and implement the necessary changes. Also unclear is whether SpaceX will have the necessary regulatory approvals to launch another test flight in just a few weeks. The success of such tests lie in the knowledge gained, and this flight is pivotal in enhancing Starship's reliability as SpaceX endeavors to make life multi-planetary. An ongoing data review is underway to identify areas for improvement in preparation for the next flight. The dedicated team at Starbase is already engaged in final preparations for Starship's third flight tests, including ship and booster static fires. Elon Musk is getting ready for the third test flight of SpaceX's Starship rocket. Team mentioned that the hardware for this flight should be ready in 3 to 4 weeks. Elon confirmed that this upcoming test, called Integrated Flight Test 3, or IFT-3, is for Starship serial number 28, not serial number 26. The booster for this flight, called Booster 10 or B10, already has most or all of its engines. Elon believes it will take about 4 weeks to get S-28 ready for launch. The last test, IFT-2, was successful for several reasons. Hot staging worked well. The Launchpad performed better. The Flight Termination System, FTS, worked as intended. There were 33 engines used during the ascent. For IFT-3, the goal is for Booster 10 to successfully land in the Gulf of Mexico, and Starship S-28 to splash down near Hawaii. Elon Musk suggests that IFT-3 should receive FAA approval relatively quickly. In recent Starbase activities, several ships underwent strategic movements. Initially, Starship 30, S-30, was relocated from High Bay, seemingly to clear the area temporarily. Following suit, Starship 31, S-31 was also moved out, gearing up for a transition to the rocket garden. Notably, it switched places with Starship 29, S-29, which made its return to high bay. After a bit of shuffle, Starship 30 found its way back to high bay. SpaceX was actively involved in various maneuvers. The Super Heavy Quick Disconnect (SQD) arm was brought back toward the tower, and the team performed a series of actions on the rocket, including lifting, testing, closing, and lowering the chopsticks. Observations on Starship 30 revealed an unusual column of missing tiles and the presence of removed-before-flight tags on the payload door. Meanwhile, at the build site, Specialized Platform Transporters, SPMTs, were strategically moved into hype. Boosters also took center stage in the activities. Booster 11, B11, made its anticipated return to the build site after cryottests. SpaceX swiftly moved it into the engine installation stand at mid-bay. Notably, Booster 10 had already completed cryotesting and awaits a static fire test on the orbital launch mount. This flurry of activities unfolded on November 20th, with Booster 11's return marking a notable event after cryotesting at NASA's. The dynamic movements and tests showcase SpaceX's continuous efforts in refining and advancing their rocket technologies at the Starbase facility. After the recent launch of the Starship rocket, the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration will investigate the explosions that occurred. The FAA, which licenses commercial rocket launches, indicated its intentions to open a standard mishap investigation into Saturday's test flight. After the first test flight in April, a similar investigation took over 4 months to complete. Once the investigation is closed, the federal agency then will likely need to complete a safety review of SpaceX's plans for a third launch before it will issue another permit. It's not clear how long that process might take. We're all just hoping now that, well, they'll act now. The top 2 lawmakers on the U.S. Senate Space and Science Subcommittee are pushing federal regulators to accelerate the approval of commercial space launches, arguing that the current pace could cost the United States its edge in the new space race. In a letter sent last week to the head of the Federal Aviation Administration's Commercial Spaceflight Office, Senators Kirsten Sinema and Eric Schmidt implored FAA Associate Administrator Kelvin Coleman to act now to eliminate red tape and reduce delays in processing launch and return to Earth or re-entry licenses. As the pace of launches from U.S. commercial spaceflight companies increases and China's state-backed space industry continues to grow, it is imperative that the processes at the FAA and other federal agencies adapt to keep pace with American innovation as well as adversarial threats in space. The senators wrote in a letter dated November 14. The FAA's Office of Commercial Space Transportation is responsible for upholding public safety while simultaneously greenlighting a growing number of commercial space launches, which have quadrupled in just 4 years. The FAA has already licensed 104 launches this year compared to 26 launches in 2019. Keeping pace with industry demand is a priority and is important for several reasons, including meeting our national security and civil exploration needs. An FAA spokesperson said in a statement, "We're working diligently to attract, hire, and retain additional staff." In their letter, the senators named NASA's commercial partners involved in the agency's flagship human spaceflight program and urged Coleman to fast-track high-priority missions, such as returning Americans to the Moon. Musk's SpaceX is responsible for developing the lunar lander, the HLS variant of the Starship, that will ferry astronauts to the surface of the Moon for the first time since the Apollo program. The remarks came as SpaceX was the subject of a lengthy environmental review by the FWS and a safety review by the FAA after the company's first test flight of its massive Moon rocket exploded about 4 minutes after lifting off in April. Regulators gave SpaceX the green light to proceed last week, and the company completed a partially successful second test flight on Saturday. With many milestones left to hit, it's clear that even if the next Starship test flight is wholly successful, a moon landing will remain on the distant horizon. Musk previously acknowledged in 2020 that he hopes SpaceX will launch hundreds of missions with satellites before attempting a flight with crew. SpaceX also must build and test the versions of Starship that will serve as refueling tankers. Any future tests will require approval from this agency. NASA is relying on the success of Starship to achieve its goal of sending astronauts to the Moon by the end of this decade. SpaceX, based in California, aims to use Starship for Mars missions, but has NASA as a crucial client, with contracts worth over $4 billion for lunar missions. Before landing people on the Moon, SpaceX needs to achieve various milestones, including suborbital and orbital flights without astronauts, and demonstrating the craft's ability to refuel itself in low Earth orbit. Despite NASA's plan for lunar landing in December 2025, many doubt its achievability. NASA is now considering altering the Artemis 3 mission to exclude landing on the Moon. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson praised SpaceX's test flight as an opportunity to learn in developing a lunar lander for future Moon visits. He said that space travel's tough, but the key is to keep trying and learning from each attempt. This is crucial, especially for a company like SpaceX, known for its philosophy of failing fast and improving quickly. To show SpaceX's success, let's compare it to Boeing, another big aerospace company. Both were given contracts by NASA in 2014 to develop crewed spacecraft. SpaceX got $2.6 billion, and Boeing received $4.2 billion. Since then, SpaceX has successfully launched astronauts to the International Space Station 8 times, with its Crew Dragon spacecraft. Boeing, on the other hand, hasn't managed a single launch with its Starliner. Even though SpaceX is doing well, the Starship would have moved on to more important tests next year. The ultimate goal is to see if Starship can carry a crew beyond low orbit and into deep space. This is part of NASA's plan, as they chose SpaceX to provide the human landing system for the Artemis 3 mission, which aims to land astronauts on the Moon. A lander must also be outfitted with life support equipment. And NASA will require Starship to make an uncrewed test landing on the Moon before allowing its astronauts on board. Still, SpaceX emphasized that explosive failures can be integral to its development process, which embraces fiery mishaps in the early stages of designing a rocket in order to learn how to build a better rocket faster than if the company solely relied on ground tests. Though SpaceX's failed test flights garner plenty of critics, it does not mean that the company is moving more slowly or costing more money than if NASA had attempted to develop a lunar lander itself. When all is said and done, NASA will pay SpaceX about $4 billion for 2 lunar landings. The company has already invested more than $3 billion in developing its South Texas launch facility and the Starship Super Heavy launch system since 2014, according to an FAA court filing dated May 19. NASA astronaut Christina Hammock-Koch spoke during a Washington media gathering on May 18 of 2023 as NASA astronauts Victor Glover and Reid Wiseman, as well as Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen, Lagan. Wiseman, Glover, Hammock-Koch, and Hansen are expected to fly around the Moon on NASA's Artemis 2 flight test slated for 2024. The space agency spends years on careful design and rigorous ground testing, all but guaranteeing success on the first flight. In contrast, SpaceX wants to put early prototypes in the air, accepting that they may explode, but will likely provide valuable information for future testing. And I think you could be successful either way, but this way certainly has its exciting moments. All in all, SpaceX needs to have as many Starship launch windows as possible. And that's about it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and that's all for today's update. If you enjoyed watching and found it useful, please make sure to subscribe to my channel, and hit the like button. And if you want to support our channel, and if you want to be up to date, you can become an exclusive member, so click on our perks through the link in the description below. Thanks to watching, and see you next time. By the way, are you familiar Tok Philippines app? Tok is a delivery service app designed to connect more people by delivering items door to door. For more information, download the Tok app, here down below.